Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Solutions Pod, which is brought to you by naturehub.com, a platform that makes it easier for you to find healthy, eco-friendly businesses and products in your area. I'm Jay Harvey Lewis, the co-founder of NatureHub, and joining me today is our wonderful co-host, Anastasia Vasovic, and our amazing guest, Graham Gould from Thermal Recycling. And today we're going to be talking about a solution he's working on for a problem that many people assume has already been solved, which is a very toxic material that you probably have already heard about before, asbestos. So Graham, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and to hear about how your company's awesome innovation got started. So first off, just tell us a little bit about what asbestos is and why it's so dangerous for humans.
Okay, well, asbestos is actually a natural occurring mineral. So it forms in certain geological areas and environmental conditions. And it's a fibrous material that is formed, if you like, between a sandwich of rocks. You have two rocks and you get this fibrous material in the middle of it. The fibers are really tiny. You can only see them under a microscope, but they give the material sort of certain properties such as strength and resistance to heat and chemicals, which means that it can be used in lots of different ways. However, if you breathe the fibers in, they get into your lungs and they can stay there. So it can also take 20 to 50 years before the effects become apparent. So, you could be working in asbestos mine, or you could be in a school where they've got asbestos. You can breathe it in and you don't realize that it's happening to you. But 20 to 50 years later, you can develop really serious lung diseases. There's a disease called mesothelioma, which is a sort of cancer, and that's a common cause of death for people who've been exposed to asbestos. So asbestos can kill you. It's a really, as you say, Justin, it's a really nasty thing. And even today, long after asbestos has been banned in many countries, asbestos is still one of the most common causes of occupational death.
Yeah, here in the UK, obviously asbestos has been covered quite a bit in the media, and so I have known quite a bit about it, and mainly as this like really dangerous and evil material. But as far as I know, it has quite an interesting history. So I was just wondering whether you could cover a little bit about the history of asbestos use and where are the primary sources for exposure to humans today, these days?
Yeah. Just saying the word asbestos is a sort of really emotive thing. Everybody who's aware of it thinks, well, wow, this is really, really horrible. But it's been around actually for thousands of years, but it's only really been exploited commercially since the Industrial Revolution. Production on a commercial scale actually started in Canada and Quebec in around about the 1870s, and until a couple of years ago, the town where it was started was still called Asbestos. It's actually changed its name now to Val des Sources, which obviously sounds somewhat better. But world production of asbestos between about 1900 and 2003 was about 181 million metric tons. And also asbestos was mixed with other things like cement and whatever. So often asbestos are used in, say, cement roof sheets, and maybe 10 to 15% of that is asbestos. But, you have something weighing 10 times more. So, really hundreds of millions of tons of material contain asbestos. And, its peak usage was in the 60s and 70s. And it was used for all sorts of things. And there's actually a really great website. If you Google Asbestorama, there's a guy who's collected hundreds of photos and different uses of asbestos, and it's an extraordinary website. But the main use for asbestos was really in construction. That was the main use, but it was also used in shipbuilding, power stations, making car brake pads. you name it, and it was used in cigarette filters. I remember when I was in school, which is quite a long time ago, we had asbestos mats in the chemistry lessons to stop things burning. So it was used a lot. Peak usage was about 1973, even though people had known for a long time that it was dangerous. And then by the late 70s, it started to be used less and less as people became aware that it could kill you. It's now been banned. Usage has been banned in about 50 countries. It was banned in the EU in 2003. And actually, sorry, it was 2005. In the UK, it was 1999. And now it's been banned in many, many places. But it's still being produced in Russia, China, Kazakhstan, Brazil. And actually, funnily enough, it hasn't been banned completely in the US, even though it is tightly regulated.
Wow, that's quite a wide range of uses. And I guess that's a very serious double whammy for the people who were smoking cigarettes back then. You're smoking a toxic carcinogen through a carcinogenic filter. Like, wow.
Yeah.
This isn't the solution that you're working on in particular, but I'm kind of curious, have there been any developments that can maybe help people who have been exposed to this substance, delay the onset of this illness, or maybe even prevent it from happening if they were exposed to this in the past?
No, as far as I'm not a medical expert, but as the problem with it is often you don't know that you have the problem. As I say, it can happen quite quickly, but it can take 20 to 50 years. There's a lady in the UK who is a big campaigner. She caught it because her husband worked in a shipyard and she washed his clothes. And so, you may not know that you have it until it's too late. I mean, now it's quite tightly regulated where you're removing asbestos or where you have an exposure to it and you wear protective equipment. But it's a form of cancer. I would guess if they spot it early enough, there may be things that they can do for it, but often it's not spotted until quite a late stage.
Wow, so that sounds like quite a sensitive material where just somebody washing the person's clothes, not even the one actually exposed to it, is the one that ends up with cancer. Wow.
Yeah, that's the sort of secondary exposure. Now, certainly in the UK, there's quite a lot of teachers who've caught the disease and died from it because asbestos was used a lot in public buildings, in schools, hospitals, that sort of thing, and in sort of insulation boards. So if you stick something on the wall with a pin, you can then be disturbing the fibers, and of course you don't know that you're doing anything wrong.
So you're talking about like just the drywall and maybe like the how they have the ceiling tiles, those kind of materials?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
So is it true that, I mean, I'm not trying to worry anyone, but is it true that potentially you might not even know what buildings asbestos is in because it kind of could be hidden between the materials, so it's not that easily identifiable?
Well, you wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, in the UK, buildings are supposed to have what's called an asbestos register, so you're supposed to identify areas where there may be asbestos, but you definitely can inadvertently disturb it. And I should make the point that it's only dangerous when it's disturbed. If you're in a building that's got a cement-bound asbestos roof, you're not in danger because the asbestos fibers are in the cement. Then you're not breathing them in. So it's only when the fibers are disturbed that they create a threat. If you're in a school, say, and there's some insulation boards or some areas where there are asbestos, as long as it's not disturbed, you're not in danger. It's only when it's disturbed and the fibers are released into the air and you breathe them in that it's dangerous.
Well, Graham, you've got me worried now, because as a teacher, I taught at kind of a very underserved middle school, and some of the ceiling tiles would fall down from time to time. And I don't know how old they were, if they really even cared to update the building, by whatever codes. Hopefully they've changed the codes. You're saying it's not even illegal in the US. So with something that's this toxic, like, what's going on to where this is still actually a legal thing in all but 50 countries in the world, and one of the most supposedly like industrialized advanced countries? I'm not really sure about that anymore, the US.
I know that there's been efforts to try and ban it in the States. As I say, it's still actually mined. They're still mining asbestos in Russia and China. They still use it a lot in places like India. And, I guess the reason it isn't banned in those places is because the people have got financial interests in ensuring that it's not banned. There are certainly lobbyists in the States who worked to reject banning it. And like many things, I suspect the answer to why it's still there is because there are vested interests who don't want it to be stopped.
Yeah, well, I suppose we've spoken a lot about the negative signs, and would be good to kind of move towards the solution point. So tell us about your company story and what you're doing to solve the problem.
Okay, well, I think we've talked enough about to understand that it's a bad thing. And one of the things that, even people who are pretty aware about the problems and the dangers of asbestos don't realize, and I speak to people in the construction sector and things, and they don't actually know what happens to asbestos when it's removed from a building. There's a whole industry of asbestos removal, but all that happens when asbestos is removed is it's basically put into a landfill site. It's put into a hole in the ground, and when licensed consultants or contractors remove asbestos, generally they put it into a plastic bag. They put the bags into a bin or a skip. They then take that to a landfill site, and then they just empty it into a hole in the ground. And when you're emptying 10 tons of asbestos and you're tipping it into a hole, the bags split, the fibers go into the air, they pollute the environment. And not only that, is once they're in the hole, they don't deteriorate or degrade. They just sit there as a problem for the next generation. So when people talk about asbestos removal, they're not removing it, they're just moving it from a building to a hole in the ground. It's still there. All the asbestos that's ever been mined is still sitting around, either in buildings or underground. And so what we do is that we have been working for 10 years to find a way of diverting asbestos away from landfill. And we've developed a process for doing that, which is a thermal process. And we've built a demonstration plant in the Midlands in the UK to prove, firstly, that our technology works, that our technology converts asbestos into a new material, that doesn't contain asbestos, and that material can be used as a cement substitute, actually, because at the moment we only have we have permission to only accept a certain type of asbestos, and that's asbestos that's been bound in cement. So when we remove the cement, we're left with a material that can be reused. So we're a circular economy business. It's fantastic because we can take the materials we'll put in a different generation, and we can then convert them to a new material that, as I say, can be used as a cement substitute. If you're not aware, cement production is one of the most polluting activities on the planet. If cement production was a country, it would only China and the US would produce more emissions than cement production. So the fact that we can, take this material, convert it into something that can now be used to decrease the amount of cement that needs to be used, it's fantastic from our perspective. And so we've been operating the demonstration plant, which is a proper plant, goes through the whole process. It just has limited capacity. And as I say, we've been operating that for about a year now.
So that's really interesting. So what are your goals for the future? So you've got this plant that is not at the capacity that it needs to be. It's just a demo plant. So what are your future plans for this?
Our immediate plan is now we're looking at how we can build and where we can build a full-scale plant. And we're planning that at the moment. We hope to be able to do that next year. Once we've got a full-scale plant up and running, the other thing we want to do in parallel is get permission to accept different types and forms of asbestos. So ultimately, we can offer a solution for all of the asbestos that was used. And once we've got to that stage and we've got the full-scale plant, then we want to have a network of plants in the UK so that we can cover the whole of the country. And also, we would look globally to see how we can use our technology around the world, because as far as we know, no one's really got to the stage that we've got. And so we believe that we're a long way ahead of everybody else.
No, that just sounds very promising, that you're not just looking to help the UK, which is in my personal best interest, but you are looking to bring that further. It's a very promising.
Yeah, well, I also hope that you can bring it to the US and maybe inspire some awareness. I think a lot of people in the US just assume that when they see all the legal commercials about, have you been exposed to asbestos? Call us. I think a lot of people, like myself, sort of have this assumption that, oh yeah, that was a thing of the past. It already got banned. No big deal. Don't worry about it. But yeah, if we could help you get this going in the US, that would be amazing. And appreciate what you're doing so much.
No, thank you. That's great. I mean, it's really, it is a really exciting project for us. I mean, it's, really interesting to be pioneers, to be doing something that hasn't been done before. And as I say, the more you learn about it, the more important it is to stop it going into landfill.
Yeah, that's true. Before obviously we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you to let us know how people can find you online. So whether they want to just find out more about your specific project, or whether they want to learn more about asbestos, how can they find you?
Yeah, our website is www.thermalrecycling.co.uk. And you should find quite a lot of information on there, and there are contact details. And actually, we've been contacted from people from all over the world through our website, interested in how they can how they can develop something in their own country. So there's a huge amount of interest in this, and as I say, it's actually really exciting.
Mm-hmm. And I've noticed you are also on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Are you active at all, or?
Yeah, we are on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. We try to be active. We try to promote the circular economy. We try to create awareness about about the problems with landfill. Yeah, as I said during our chat, we are a circular economy business, and we try to draw attention to other circular economy businesses and to create awareness for how important it is to try and have a more sustainable approach to things that we've taken for granted for too long.
That's true. Yeah, this was an absolutely amazing conversation. I mean, I personally have looked into asbestos before, because there was a suspicion that in our building there is asbestos, and it took them a really long time to do all the assessments and figure it out. So I personally done my own research, but this conversation has brought so much information to light, which is super fascinating, interesting. So thank you so much for joining us, Graham, and telling us so much about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and obviously everyone who's been listening to this video, please feel free to share it. So to spread the word and to let other people know about this problem and also the solutions to this problem. And yeah, if you still have any questions left, feel free to leave the comments below and we'll make sure to come back to them. Thank you, and until the next time.